name is Wendy Potomsky and I'm the managing partner and owner of Retake Furniture Rentals. Retake is once again a proud supporter of the Canadian Film Festival and is working to contribute to the Canadian film and TV industry by making it an easy and sustainable place to do business. Retake provides sustainable short and long-term furniture rental options to meet production schedules and product needs. Retake also understands the importance of set design and the dynamic nature of the film and TV industry, which is why we created a company to specifically support Canadian filmmakers. Retake can assist you in setting up your production office with sustainable alternatives to keep your team working safely as we all head back to work. We use sustainable approaches to minimize product going to landfill, which means any product supplied by Retake is helping to support the circular economy. Our in-house upholstery services can tailor our product to meet your set design requirements and match your color schemes. Contact us to discuss your office furniture needs. Our goal is to help you get back to work as safely and efficiently as possible. Stay safe, everyone, and enjoy the films and shorts at this year's Canadian Film Festival.
Celebrate Canadian filmmakers on Super Channel Fuse with an exclusive homegrown event.
I'm ready.
Go.
The Canadian Film Fest presented by Super Channel brings this year's festival into your home for a second year as a virtual experience.
Goodbye.
Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night until April 18th, enjoy the premieres of indie films and shorts from critically acclaimed and up-and-coming Canadian producers and directors.
And this is where the donkey starts talking.
Immerse yourself in this inspiring and spirited event, both on air and online, with live Facebook Q&A sessions that follow the films.
Makes sense. Start it.
Experience the Canadian Film Fest, proudly presented by Super Channel.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Canadian Film Festival. Thanks for joining us for Q&A with our filmmakers from the Shorts program this afternoon. My name is Mark Yashodi. I'm one of the programmers at the festival.
And I'm Richard Pierre.
We're going to be talking to each of the film teams one by one. But to start, we have the director of BIRDIE with us, Alex Lefebvre. Hi, Alex.
Hi, guys.
And you have your producer with us. Why don't you?
Exactly. Yes, it's Isabelle, my producer for the film.
Hi, guys. Thanks for being part of the festival.
Hi.
So I'm really glad we're starting with this film. It's a really fun film to start with. Alex, why don't you tell us about the inspiration for where this story about a golf bag came from?
Well, it started with the machine, with the golf cart. It's actually my dad's golf cart. So I went one time at the golf game with him, and he loves gadget and everything that's tech. And he was so psyched to show me his new device. And I was like, it's so cinematographic. I have to do something about it. And at the same time, I wanted to do more of a film that's funny, entertaining, because my last project were more around drama. And I said, oh, it's a good match.
Yeah. Right. What I love about it is the shift in perspective that it has, because it starts off with the guy and, you know, you feel like it's his story, but then suddenly it shifts to this golf club. And one of my favorite things in any film is anytime directors can give personality to an inanimate object, which is what I loved about this. And this golf bag has a very long journey. You're taking it to a lot of places. So Isabel, maybe this is a question for you in terms of the production. You know, how did you find all the places? What was your schedule like shooting in these places? What kind of difficulties did you encounter?
We shoot all the short movie in 2 days, I think so. 3 days, 2 days, and after we did a reshoot, because at the beginning we really would like to have a lot of places, and when we start to do the offline of the movie, we didn't have enough places, so we came back and shoot some other places, and it was not really hard to find all of those places because Alexandre have a lot of ideas, so it was really easy just to jump in and take the bag everywhere. So it was pretty easy, but we need a lot of time to do all of those places.
Right. I think we have a question from Marie in the chat. I think this is a bit of a joke, but she's asking, can you talk about casting the golf bags?
But it was a real thing though, because I was like on the Kijiji page and marketplace, and I was like scrolling for several months just to find the bag that has the personality that we wanted. We wanted to have something more vintage because it also represented the golfer, but we wanted to have like facial expressions. So with the artistic department, we wanted to create something. It's not big. It's subtle, but like there's a pocket that's open that we wanted to make like a sort of mouth or something like that. But we found the bag on Kijiji, and when we found it, it was like, okay, no, this is the one that we were looking for.
Fantastic! You knew it when you saw it.
Yeah, exactly.
Isabel, getting back to the locations a little bit. You know, you're shooting in a lot of places, a lot of fields, bus station, trains. Did you guys do it in very official ways? Did you do it kind of guerrilla style where you're just going to these locations and grabbing quick shots? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, it was really guerrilla style. We didn't have any authorization to do that. We were in the subway one time, and we didn't have any authorization to do that, because when we shoot in places like metro station, it's really hard to have authorization. You have to represent the transport mark and all of that stuff. So we didn't have it. So we were really in guerrilla mode. We were just three of us. So the DOP, Alexandre, the director, and me. And I was like watching everywhere. Is there people watching us? So it was pretty guerrilla for all the field and the place when it was out of the city. We had some authorization and we were in a private place. So it was okay. But for some of the place in the city, it was really really nice to do, but really guerrilla style, yeah.
Great.
But what was stressful about this is because the golf bag wasn't really working properly. We had someone who controlled it with a remote control, but the bag was doing his own thing, and that was really stressful because it was worse than having an animal or something like that. Because one time it just wanted to go to the left, and then there's no stopping at it. So we had. I thought at the beginning we thought that it would be easy with not too much actors, with just a small crew and something that is an object, but in fact it was way more challenging than we thought. Even more so when it's guerrilla and we don't have authorization to film there.
Richard, you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what were the reactions to like people, like the bystanders of this, like, because I've never seen this kind of like golf bag before, and it does have a life of its own. So like, did you get any interesting reactions from bystanders to your golf bag's performance?
Yes, there was a lot, and there's a sequence that is not in the movie, but we shot in a skate park with a lot of skaters around, and we wanted to just travel around there. And we had some hecklers, we had some people that were really interested in it and want to touch it, but the majority were just didn't know what they saw. It wasn't like extra alien way of something that's not there, and that was one of the concerns, because we didn't want it to be a too big shock for the audiences when it starts to move. So it was in post-production that we decided to show the bag moving in a lot of scenes before it escaped, because we didn't want to be like just so mind-boggling that it doesn't do the effect that we wanted.
Right. We're just about coming up on time here, but I have one last question here from Ellie that I'll get in. Can you talk a little bit about the music and the score? Because the music, does a big job of setting the mood and is a big part of it. So can you talk a little bit about where the music came from and how you
played it? We work with Pierre-Olivier Bolduc, who's the instrument is a pan drum. So it's really like a meditative way of music, and it's what we wanted with the music is something to be. It would be the same music that I would use if it was a real human, and to give like a credibility or a realistic way, and that's like the distance between the two. To treat something absurd, but in a realistic way. That's what I wanted to do. So we wanted to do something deep. That's we feel like the journey it's happening, but it's still a journey that's kind of intriguing for my main character, the golf bag. So that was the main idea behind it. And it's when I write, I like to listen to some music, and I listened to one of this song, and I was like, oh, it kind of fits the mood that I want to have it, and to feel like to give the emotion that it's something real, that for the golf bag that is happening, it's something, the biggest thing that happens in his life.
Fantastic. So unfortunately, we're just about out of time. We're going to talk to our next filmmakers.
Yeah.
For everyone watching, stick around. We're going to be right back in a couple of seconds. We're going to see Isabel again later on, because she also produced one of our other films today. And yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for being a part.
Thank you so much for the selection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, welcome back. We're here with the filmmaker of 1978, Hamza Bangash. Hamza, there's a lot to talk about with this film. We don't have a lot of time, but to start off, why don't you tell us about, it was great for me to see this, to sort of discover this film, because, not just because it's a great work from a fellow Pakistani, but also because it's looking at a topic that is rarely talked about, right? The Christian community in Pakistan is not something that the mainstream thinks about over there, let alone in the diaspora or over the rest of the world. So why don't you tell us about, how you came to this subject and what the inspiration for the film was?
So a lot of the film with this one kind of started out with my executive producers, Abid Aziz Mershid and Rashid Maksud Hamidi. So they both grew up in that version of Pakistan, which was when it was like on the hippie trail. And this is so surreal to say, but it was when Afghanistan, Iran, and in Pakistan where like Western tourists would come to like have their vacations. And they grew up in a different time, and they wanted to make a feature film about that time. And for me at that point, I was like, well, a feature film's a huge commitment, so why don't we make a short first and see how that goes? And then a lot of my process is, once I kind of have a topic, then I'll go and do my research. And I discovered that the Goan Christian community was really disproportionately affected by the change in climate that happened in Pakistan in the 70s. And for me, a lot of the reason I wanted to make this film was I felt like there was a change in climate. When this film started, it was when Trump was in power. And there's a lot of kind of different changes happening across the world in India and Brazil and Turkey. And I was like, this is a good time to repeat this history of Pakistan, because, we've already kind of been through these sweeping political changes. So why not go into the history of this country while all these other countries are living their history right now? Because I felt like the topic felt really relevant to me.
And so would you say that the response to this film is motivation to make that feature?
Definitely. Also realizing just how expensive it's going to be, because this was my first time making a period film, and we went like way over budget, and I didn't really realize like how expensive it is to like make a period film. So it's incentive, and also now we have a more practical idea of how to make that feature. Because initially when we were discussing it, I was like, oh yeah, I can probably make it, for this much. And having made the short, I'm like, it's going to be a really expensive movie to make.
Right. I also love just the punk personality of it. and I love that it's thinking about religion as culture as well. You know, it's confrontational about the politics of Pakistan, but it's also thinking about this main character and what he's going through. You know, he's not the kind of character you expect to be talking about in a religious context, right? But he's kind of forced to take on that role. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, you talked about the inspiration for it, but I would also love for you to talk about the research process for this. You know, when you were learning about the history around that, was this a community that you already knew a bunch about? Was this something that you had to learn about? And what were the kind of nuances that you discovered there about that?
I mean, I love what you said about religion as culture, because for me, and for the vast majority of people I know, religion is just like decided at their birth, right? Like they're born into that culture. So I think it's really interesting when it's like, oh, you know, your Muslim identity, well, you're born into it, or your Christian identity, you know, it's not necessarily an identity that you choose for yourself. So you know, that was something I didn't realize was what we were doing until the film was made, you know? And for the process of making this film was my producer and a lot of my friends are from the Goan Christian community. And so she kind of, my producer, Carol Nerona, she, like I spoke with her dad, and then she introduced me to a bunch of people from the community, a bunch of the musicians who were affected, because basically in '78, the nightclubs were closed down in Karachi, and Karachi was kind of like Beirut or Dubai, where it had a really rich nightclub scene. That's the city that the film is based in. And all these Christian Goan musicians who were like the backbone of that industry were suddenly overnight unemployed. And now Canada is actually one of the places where there's a huge Goan Christian community. They all migrated to Toronto or Miami. And I ended up meeting a bunch of these musicians who decided to stay on in Pakistan, and they continue to perform over there, and they continue to have gigs, but everything is now kind of just done in secret. And that's when I met Norman D'Souza, who inspired the character of Lenny. And he told me what he went through, and I was just like, you know, there's a story. That's such an interesting story. So, you know, I took that back, and then I blended it with some of my own experiences as an artist in Pakistan. And that's how we came up with the character of Lenny D'Souza. Because with Norman, you know, he never gave up. He kept performing despite the vast differences and where Pakistan is now versus where it was then. And I mean, I'm going to plug this a little bit. Now we're doing a Kickstarter to help Norman record a new album as through this film, you know, because it's like, it's never too late to keep the rock and roll spirit alive.
Fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about the casting as well? Because the lead is sort of so great in terms of balancing that demure personality, but then also, you know, seeing him lash out at the end like that. Can you talk about what the casting was like?
I mean, the casting was a nightmare, just because like it's really hard.
That's why I wanted to ask this question, because
we don't have casting agents in Pakistan. You know, the industry is like really fragile, and we wanted to cast from the Goan Christian community. Ultimately, we weren't able to find someone for the role of Lenny from the community, but Sherwin, who played the role of Thomas, Lenny's younger brother, is from the Goan Christian community. And most of kind of the extra parts and the other parts in the film are from the community. And then we ended up kind of rewriting the role of Lenny D'Souza to make him half Muslim. And that also, it's not in the script, but it helps to show kind of how he's more disengaged from that identity. And then with Zishan, so Zishan's a non-actor. This was his first film. And so Sherwin, neither of them have ever acted before. Zishan's actually a really famous artist in Pakistan. Like his work has traveled everywhere. And one of the things that happened after we were considering him for the role was they gave me his book. And his book is all about the journey of being an artist in Pakistan, and where like the country, so, you know, it can be not the most stable place. And a lot of times you have this black and white kind of art, and his art is full of satire and humor. And that's just his personality, you know, like, it's like when you're dealing with really heavy shit, sometimes, you know, it can overwhelm you, or you can, you know, look at it with humor, which is why a lot of people who've been through trauma turn to humor. And a lot of Zishan's personality was what attracted me to him. And I'm like, I think he would be so good for this role, because he's so charismatic, he's so funny, and he just has this personality. And for me as a director, I try and cast people who are close to the role, and then all my job is to like bring that part of their personality out. And Zishan was willing to be so vulnerable and to go there. So it was really exciting to work on this performance with him. He's an amazing guy.
Great. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I do want to ask you a little bit about filmmaking in Pakistan. You know, Canada is seeing this sort of big trend now of diaspora filmmakers that live here or grew up here, and they're going back to their home countries to make films, right? So can you talk a little bit about, you know, you've been making work in Pakistan for quite a while now, for a few years. Can you talk a little bit about what that process has been like and what advice you would have for other diaspora filmmakers?
I mean, I can't entirely speak to the reasons behind the other filmmakers. I can only speak to my journey. And for me, I had an experience of being like heavily racialized as a creator. And when you're beginning your artistic voice, you don't want to, you have to be vulnerable. And if you feel like you're in a space where you're not allowed to be vulnerable, then you're never really going to grow. And that's how I felt. So I wanted to move to a country like Pakistan where, you know, I'm not being, I mean, honestly, over there, I got a lot more questions than I do in Canada about where I'm from. But over there, I wasn't like, oh, you're Pakistani, so let's hear about that immigrant story. You know, it's like, I really want to hear about your immigrant experience. And I'm like, I would like to be more than an immigrant. The human experience is universal. So for diaspora filmmakers that are, you know, considering working, I think the most important thing is to work within the local community and make sure you're telling that story authentically and that it's also coming from an authentic space. It's not just, you know, you traveling to a new country and being exploitative, because we've also seen that with diaspora filmmakers where, you know, they'll go and they'll pick up on topics that they feel like are exotic and will be interesting to a Western eye. So I think authenticity is so key, and if you decide to go on that journey. And for me, I don't super identify as a diaspora filmmaker just because I'm 30 years old right now and my life has been split right down the middle. I grew up equally in Pakistan and equally in Canada. I feel like I'm comfortable operating in both worlds, and you know, really just tell the story that feels true to you is the only advice I would give.
Great. Well, unfortunately, we've just run out of time, but Hamza, thank you for the film. It's a fantastic movie. Thanks for being a part of the festival, and we'll see you around.
Thank you
thanks
guys
for chatting
so much.
with us.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi, welcome back. We're joined by the director of Nothing to See Here, Gabrielle. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for being at the festival.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a lovely film that starts off unexpected, you know, with the idea of all these cat murders that are happening, and then ends totally unexpected as well. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, just to start off, what was the inspiration for it? How did you come up with this story? Why did you want to tell it?
I knew I wanted, first of all, this is my film that I made right outside of film school. So first independent project. And I knew I wanted to do something about social inequality and maybe, yeah, like a social film. And I knew I wanted to tell a neighborhood story, but I didn't know which direction it was going to choose. Also, I've been doing a lot of dramas before, and this is still a drama, but I wanted to add a bit of humor into it. And so that's when the idea just sort of happened with like cat murders. So like it's a bit weird, but it's sad at the same time. And then it sort of became a story about gentrification. So it was interesting to sort of mix those different tones. Does that answer the question well?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what I love about it, that you know, the opening of it is literally people making funny faces on photos of a memorial, right?
Yeah.
But then you have really emotional moments as well where she's stuck in the closet and she's having to listen to, you know, this thing that might have happened. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, you mentioned this is your first project out of film school. What was that transition like, making your sort of first independent thing? I imagine you worked with a lot of people that you met in film school. Was there a change, and not just in the production of it, but also in in the fact that you're making something that is blending tones and is maybe not as dramatic as some of the previous stuff that you might have done?
Well, it was definitely different to work outside of film school because I guess the timeline's really different, and you compete against. I'm saying in terms of grants, you compete against like bigger names. You compete against everyone. So that was tougher, and you're in the sort of like on the big kids table, so you have to know your stuff. But it's I really recommend doing it for anyone who's outside of who just finishes film school, to not wait too long, because then you get nervous about it. But I think when you just do it, it breaks the ice, and then it's less scary afterwards. But no, I don't know. I don't know what.
For the tone of it, was it natural to you in terms of finding the funny side of this and making it work in the film?
I think so. Just in the like you were mentioning the memorial at the beginning, just the fact that it's a cat memorial,
yeah,
makes it weird and absurd, but I just like the idea of it, and just like filming it like it's a realist film.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I didn't know if it will work, and then we did it, and then I thought it kind of worked. So
have you ever come across real cat memorials somewhere? Have they ever existed?
No, but there are real cat murderers in like specific neighborhoods. For sure. There's been that for sure, and there's been actually what gave me the idea is in Quebec we have this radio station that's very right wing. And some interview got famous from that a guy who mentioned that he hates street cats, and sometimes when he drives with his car, he purposely tries to hit cats. Okay. He's like, yeah, these are like vermins. They just reproduce, and they just go all over. They're disgusting. Like, you got to make it stop. I'm like, well, this be a perfect metaphor when talking about gentrification. Just the different languages, like how these two different. I'm sorry, this is not my first language, so I'm having trouble. But
no, you're doing great.
Just the difference between classes, and having to represent that, the difficulty for them to understand each other and to have empathy for each other. So I guess that's what.
That's kind of, you know, what was so wonderful about it as well. You know, it's one thing on the surface, but then it's something completely different underneath. We're almost out of time, but I would love for you to talk a little bit about the casting for this. You know, the lead, it's so fantastic. And again, I think with a role like this, it would have been so easy to play up the farce of it, but she keeps things really grounded, and you really feel for her, even though at the beginning it kind of feels like this is a fool's quest, right? Can you talk a little bit about where you found her and what the casting process was like?
It's an actress I met on another project, and when I met her, I immediately thought to myself, oh, I need to make a film with her. She's so good. And we sort of built the character together. I wanted her to be included in that process. And so, yeah, it's like I kind of have a thing for characters who aren't perfect. I guess everyone does, but so that's why sometimes she does go overboard, and she is on a fool's quest, and I wanted to create all these other characters that she's sort of pushing away, like her girlfriend. I think she's gonna lose her girlfriend because she's being really not understanding. She's losing her job too. But it's something you can empathize with still, because you understand it, like losing losing a cat and still believing and grief at the same time, because like her thing is like it's been 2 months, right, that the cat hasn't came back, so everyone's like of course like the cat's not going to come back. She's like, I don't know for sure, so I want to make sure that if she's still out there, I need to get her. And so we both, Vanessa and I, we both agreed that we needed to make this sort of complex character, but she did an amazing job to portray her.
So I wish we could talk more, but unfortunately we have to move on to the other films as well. Thank you for joining us, Gabrielle. Thank you for including your film in the festival. And
thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Hello, we're back with the directors of OTANIMM-ONNIMM, Nico and Terrence. Welcome to the festival. Thank you for being a part of it.
Hey, hi, thank you.
You know what's so wonderful about this film is it's so brief, but there's so much to talk about it, especially the fact that you two have worked on it together. You know, it's broadly about a father and daughter relationship, but it's also about the idea of making art together. So what was the impetus to do this little film? What was the inspiration for it?
I guess, well, we got asked by our producer to do an animation for like an indigenous sort of animation. And I had a Super 8 of my daughter when she was 5, acting like a lion. And it was just some B-roll that I had shot from other films that I've been shooting years and years ago. So that kind of was the catalyst to animate and to do traditional animation. I always wanted to animate this thing and rotoscope it. And so Nico now is in high school and in a PVA visual arts program. So I guess it was just the right time. Everything just kind of fell into place.
Can we just talk about that real quick, about being a high schooler and getting a film into a film festival? Congratulations. Like, talk about that.
Thank you. It's a lot, but it's good. It was a lot of work doing school and working on animating, but I think it's really paid off, and yeah, it's really cool.
She's a celebrity. She's
I can imagine.
Cool.
What's so great about the film is it's thinking about the mechanics of art making as well, right? And you know, you have the zoetrope, and that's how you get into part of the animation. And you know, you're thinking about processing photos. Terrence, you're a professional artist, and Nico, you're in high school, you're studying art, you're just kind of starting out. Tell us a little bit more about, you know, what the process of making this was like, and especially, you know, did you try any sort of techniques that were new to you, or what was kind of the learning process of working on this like?
I think for me it was a learning process for both of us, because we had never done the phonotrope, and that was just something we discovered. And so Nico did that animation, and then we hand developed everything with Caffeinol.
Right.
So we hand developed it with instant coffee, vitamin C, and a soda wash. So that was something completely new to both of us. And we did over 900 photographs, still photography. And so we hand developed technically 850 of the images. So for you?
It was kind of a mix of like you teaching me new processes that I've never been exposed to. But then also like the shift from like you're my dad, but now we're also like collaborating together, trying to work on this piece.
What was that like? Did you what did you see a different side of your dad, or what was it like, working with him on an art project as opposed to him just being your dad?
It was definitely, well, I've been kind of around you while you're working on your other stuff, so it wasn't necessarily new. It was just new to like be in the situation and then have to like talk with you, and it was different. But it was good.
Well, we had to be co-directors, so there were very frustrating times because she was in high school and was doing homework, and I'm like, we got to get this rotoscope done. We got to get this rotoscope done. She was just like, ugh. So there were a lot of moments like that, and we had to kind of put our director's hats on and just get the work done, because we were on a tight budget, and we finished this just before COVID hit, like literally just before it hit. So
I want to ask you, Terrence, a little bit about, like I said, you're a professional artist. You've done a lot of work in a lot of different mediums over many, many years. And Nico is, just sort of emerging and starting out. What is it, when you think about your development as an artist and you're looking at your daughter and her development as an artist, what is that comparison like? What are you seeing there, and what's different? What's the same?
Well, I grew up around my parents being traditional First Nations textile artists.
Mm-hmm.
And my background is actually in fiber and textiles, traditionally. And so I grew up around my mother beading and being around sewing and telling stories and joking around and, doing a lot of things like that. And then Nico grew up around both her parents. Her mother did animation and stuff, so she would actually go down to the Animation Society here in Calgary and go and hang out there. And I guess it was just, for me, I was always around art, but it was a different type of art.
Mm-hmm.
And then now Nico has always been kind of around my work and around, she's grown up in social media.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have seen her participate in a lot of my work and things like that. So it's a very close bond that we have. And I just, the funny thing is she's going to the high school that I went to, and I learned photography and all these things. And so it's the exact same high school, better program than I ever had. And so it's kind of a funny, weird legacy. So that's it's to see her kind of, and she's also, her teachers are friends of mine.
Okay, great.
So she's
that could be a good or bad thing for Nico.
Yes, exactly. So but yeah, the process, she's definitely carving out her own path and going her own way, and sort of influenced by what I've done. But
well, you've given me all the tools.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how she feels about her dad being a half-naked performance artist.
Well, we're almost out of time, unfortunately, but this is a good question to end on from Abby. She's asking, Nico, do Terrence, you're an interdisciplinary artist, and this film is dealing with a lot of mediums. Nico, do you have a specific interest in any specific medium, or are you sort of looking at all these different types of art as well, sort of going forward as an artist?
Well, definitely animation is just kind of what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with this film, I've been exposed to so many different approaches to animation that it'd be great to like dive deeper into that and explore different ways and different mediums while still doing animation.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay, so unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But we want to thank you guys for being a part of the festival. It's a beautiful film, and we'll see you soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Take care.
Yeah.
Hello, we're back with the director of Rosaline, like in the movies. Sarah, thank you for being part of the festival. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much. It's so nice, this film festival.
Great. I really love this film just because it's one of my favorite things in movies, when movies that are thinking about the boundary between fiction and reality, but also thinking about the effect on actors and what goes into the idea of playing a role. So I would love for you to talk about, how did this come about? What was the inspiration for it?
At the base of this project is, in fact, Louise Portal, the main actress, who approached us because Louise is also a writer, and she wanted to adapt her short stories, Roseline. So she approached me and the producer, Dominique Dussault, to see if we were interested. So the story at the basic was about an actress who found the son that she gives to adoption. So that was the story that Louise brought. So me to put myself into it and to take a part of it as my own. I always loved this, as you said, this boundaries between fiction and reality and the making of film into the film. So because the main character was an actress in the film, it was just the perfect setup to play with what's going on in the role that she's playing and her real life. And that's also something that many actors have told me in reality, that sometimes they play a role that totally connect to what happened in their life at this moment. So it was all connecting.
Yeah, and it's thinking on so many levels. It's thinking about that, but it's also thinking about the industry and the kinds of challenges that actors face in terms of living their lives or having kids, and then how that conflicts with their careers. One of the things that I kind of love about it is there's a bit of a twist, right? And with films that are usually so deeply thinking about fiction and reality, they forget to have fun a little bit sometimes. But there's something really fun going on in this film, even though it's very deep. Can you talk a little bit about putting that together? Because when it's something that you immediately want to rewatch once you finish. And
the link, yeah.
Yeah, and when you do rewatch, you realize, oh, it's been giving me hints the whole time, right? So can you talk about constructing that a little bit? Did that come really easily? Did you have to figure that out?
But at first, I wrote many versions of the thing because it was hard to present, and even for institution, some adopt the film right away, and some other one refuse 6 times and didn't see anything in it. So it was really depending on the institution. And seriously, I made many versions, and sometimes even on set, people were lost on what was the reality. Is it the real? Is it in the film or not in the film? So it was all confusing. And I even had other sequence that I had to totally cut because it was just going too far in those meta physical thing. So I had to cut some. And I put humor everywhere. Even it's really dramatic, I always like to put a little inch of funny. So I'm really glad that you smile at some point, because it was a bit dramatic story to talk about, she give adoption thing. And also as a woman, I often point like, oh, it's a woman subject, or it's like, so by making some funny things in it, and it can connect to every spectator, in fact.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's quite light and funny in a way, but I also sort of love the explosion of drama, right? That scene where she is alone by herself it really hit me quite hard. So I think that balance in the film is really nice. We have we almost have to wrap it up, but we have a question here from
someone.
Yes, from Joel, asking about the decision to shoot in black and white. Can you talk a little bit about your visual vision for it? And
it's imposed to itself because it's a film on film. So I had to go back to the golden age of filmmaking, and it's a pure black and white thing. And I had the CinemaScope, but I shoot all my film in CinemaScope. I realized I really like this Sergio Leone format where you have space to go in it. And I just watched so many black and white film before, like Cleo 527 and all those, also all the Cassavetes film, where with the actress, I have a blind Cassavetes actress who's also his wife, because it really inspired the main character Louise, because they look alike, you know. So so it was an impulse. I needed to make it black and white because film was black and white at first.
It's beautiful. We're just about out of time, unfortunately. Again, such a lovely film.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for being a part of the festival, and we'll see you again very soon.
Yay! Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, sorry for the delay. We're back again with our final filmmaking team. We're joined by Sarah El Abed, who directed Ain't No Time for Women, and we're seeing Isabel again, who also produced this film. This film came at a really great time in the programming because you see a lot of films and you're trying to find the best stuff, and Ain't No Time for Women just had such an exuberant personality that it gave us all a lot of energy. And seeing those characters and meeting everyone in the film was so lovely. It's about women's engagement in politics, and especially women in the Arab world and in an Arab context, and sort of going against all the stereotypes and images we have of women in countries like Tunisia. So Sarah, if you could just talk a little bit about, how did this come about? How did it get started, and why you wanted to make this film?
Okay, so first, thank you very much for your kind words. Every time I tell the story of how the film came about, I change the story. So because it's been a really long journey. I've always wanted to do a film about Tunisia just because I'm from there. I've immigrated with my parents when I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was always really fascinated about the vision of people in Canada of the Arab world. Since I left when I was 9, there was a lot of things that I haven't seen when I was there. And since Tunisia is so different than other Arab countries, I was kind of like really confused about the perception and the misconception that some of the people here have about the Arab world. Mm-hmm. So I always had like this, I always wanted to show like the reality that I grew up in. And then also always wanted to do a film in a hair salon. And then the revolution came about. So like, it was a lot of subjects that I was like, I wanted to talk about, but I didn't really know, like, I wanted to do a film in the hair salon and it was a fiction. And then I wanted to do something about the revolution and it was a documentary. And then and the revolution, like exploring it, I realized that why Tunisia was so different, different than the other countries in the way of like handling the Arab Spring was mostly because of its history that's really different from other Arab countries, and mostly because of its feminine condition, its relationship to the religion. Mm-hmm. So then it was like lots of subjects, and through discussions and research and reflection, it just came to me that I connected the dots and I just said, okay, well, let's do a documentary in a hair salon during the election. And that way I can like discuss about everything that I want to discuss about.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Isabel, to bring you in on the conversation a little bit, you produced this film. What was it like putting it together, going to another country, making this movie? Talk to us a little bit about that and what the challenges there were.
Yes, it was my first project. So at the beginning, when you start with the movie in another country, could be hard. And it was, but at the same time, Sarah had a lot of contact in Tunisia. So it was easy for us. Like, I feel like I was hosted by the Sarah's family when I arrived in Tunisia a little bit because her dad was at the airport. So it was really easy on a way. But in the other end, when we arrived in Tunisia, the security guard at the airport didn't want to let us leave with the camera's equipment. So at the beginning of the shooting, we were in Tunisia without any cameras. And we were afraid that we will not be able to bring the camera in because they said that we have to have a presidential authorization. But I made my research before, and it was not written nowhere that we have to get an authorization about cameras from the president. So we were a little like stuck with this problem when we arrived, but we managed the thing because again, Sarah have a lot of really, really good contacts. So I could explain you the scene, but we put the photography director and the sound girl in the Airbnb after we went with Sarah in the car and we drive everywhere around in Tunis, and we finally found a girl because I don't know, Sarah, I don't know what's the link with you and this woman, but she
have a cousin of an uncle
of another, and she knows a little bit the president or people close to him. So we got kind of a little note on a paper, and it was not so clear, but we came back to the airport, yeah, and we were able to have our equipment back. But at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, we will not be able to have our cameras. So I was a little bit shocked about all this, like just this thing when we arrive in the airport. Yeah.
It's quite a way to start.
Yeah.
Sarah, if you could talk a little bit about, one of the things that was most interesting in the film was it is a microcosm of all the different opinions that are floating around in terms of the civilian population and how they view the politics of the country. The most interesting one for me was the young woman who's talking about voting for the Muslim conservatives, right? So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the generational divide there. If a lot of people think about the US right now and over the last 4 or 5 years and how polarized things are there, but it's specifically in Tunisia and specifically between the older generation and the younger generation, these older women have such a kind of shocked and explosive response to her. What is that relationship like between the generations in terms of the politics?
Well, it's definitely more complicated than just generation, because there's something within the population in Tunisia where you have like two social classes, and it's kind of like it's almost too precise. Like you could see like the difference between like the two social classes. So this, like the women that the older women in the salon are coming from a certain social class where obviously like the last the previous like presidency was in some ways more I don't know how to say it because it's kind of complicated, but in a way these old women, like they lived through something really different from what is going on now, but also were privileged. So it was like obviously like before we had like there was in lots of ways like Tunisia was really great, but for sure when you talk to these specific women, they have a vision that's really more beautiful of what it was before. So that I want to correct because I don't think it's like too clear in the documentary, and I think it's more correct to say that. Yeah. And then in terms of the generation right now, the problem is like two classes are still there. So for sure, some people like they crave like what we had before, but because since they were in the more privileged class, they were like they had all the privileges that came with the dictatorship. And then for the others, they're like, well, now we can express ourselves and we can do projects and we can do our art and we can do films. So there's this like these two groups that have like confronting opinions. But then there's also other people who are like, and that was where this young girl was coming from. Other people who were just like, we're not eating right now. We don't have money. So all of your social debates about like feminism and like a freedom of speech and everything, this is like, we don't care about it. Like, we just want to eat. Like, please, like take all of our freedom away and just give us an apple. Yeah. So what we didn't show, like most of the conversation we had with her is just that the more conservative party is like really, it's more organized and had like an economic program that was like looked better. And that's how they get like the younger generation to believe in them, because a lot of students can get jobs after graduating. A lot of people aren't working. So I think that where she was coming from, and so some young people, like why they go like in a different direction than the older generations is like, well, when you were young, the country wasn't that bad. There was still money. The economy was still running, like you had jobs. We don't. So right now, all of these things about like religion and everything. Like we don't want to discuss that right now. That's not the issue.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's more complicated. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you do a really commendable job in capturing that stuff, and especially sort of the human side of it. You know, we have a question here from Jake, and probably this is, you know, Isabel can chime in on this as well. Can you guys talk a little bit more about the shooting process of the film? How long did you film for? How much footage did you have? What was the editing process like?
Yeah. So we shot for about almost 3 weeks. We were there every day.
Okay.
And we had like 14 hours of rushes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So it was a lot. I don't know, Isabelle, if you want to add something about the shooting.
Yeah, but it was pretty easy because I feel that we were just women chatting together, because we were just a woman crew, the DOP and the sound girl, and it was really easy to be in this hair salon because we were chatting about our hair, about food, about, you know, a lot of things. So the shooting was pretty easy because we feel welcome in this place. So I think that was easy because we were really open just to share together things, and we were talking about Canada as they were talking about Tunisia, but it's not in the movie. But yes, yeah.
And it's such, I mean, it's such a comfortable environment, and you feel that in the film. You know, it feels like you're part of that environment, and you're just hanging out and listening and chatting.
Yeah.
This is a good opportunity to bring in this question from Melanie, who's asking, can you give us an update on the salon and on your grandma and everyone else? Like, how are they doing, especially, you know, with all this COVID stuff that's going on? How is everyone?
So I talked to them yesterday, actually, all of them. They're doing pretty great.
Great.
My grandma got the vaccine 3 days ago, so she was really happy. And it was actually like Saida, the hairdresser, who was like coordinating the whole thing. So it gives you an idea of how like we left them at the same, they're still the same. Yeah, so yeah, for sure, COVID has affected them, has affected Tunisia a lot. The country is kind of like, they're kind of scared right now because the economy was already like pretty damaged, but with COVID, it's getting worse and worse. But they're doing good. The salon is still running, up and running. Actually, when it was like quarantine, Saida like did like a little, I don't know if I should say this, but she had like this little salon in her house, and like people were coming in and out, and she was going to people's houses to do their hair, like my grandmother, and we were screaming, like my mom was calling them like, this is inappropriate. She's an old lady, she might die. But yeah, so they're still the same. They're doing good, and they saw the film. They still don't understand why this thing is going into festivals and it's considered like a movie.
Yeah.
To them, it's like, well, we're not that interesting, but yeah.
That's fantastic. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So we have to say goodbye, but I want to say happy birthday to Isabel. It's your birthday today.
Thank you.
We want to wish you a happy birthday, and hopefully everyone else watching is going to wish you a happy birthday. And also congrats on the hot docs programming for the film, right?
Thank you.
So yeah, if anyone out there wants to watch it again or tell your friends and family to watch it, you can catch it at Hot Docs at the end of the month. And that's it from us for today. We're gonna have more films this evening and next week as well. So come back and join us again. And thank you everyone for joining us. Take care.
Thanks.